In market news now, most Asian equity benchmarks rose as a rebound in U.S. shares extended into after-hours trading after a set of bumper results from tech giants. Quarterly earnings reports this week have cast a spotlight on tech giants Apple, Amazon and Meta platforms, which reported results that beat Wall Street's expectations for revenue. Meanwhile, Vodacom reported a 29.7% jump in third quarter service revenue, benefiting from the inclusion of Vodafone Egypt. Vodacom bought a 55% stake in the Egyptian arm of Vodafone for about 43.6 billion rand in 2021. It's the largest deal in the telecom operator's history. To give us more perspective on the markets and help us wrap up the week, we are joined by Tato Mashego, who is a portfolio manager at Sanlam Private Wealth. Tato, thank you so much for your time. As I mentioned, we're getting close to wrapping up the week, and I'm curious what's driving markets right now.
Good afternoon, Anastasia. Well, I think you alluded to the very strong tech results which came in the US. So quarterly results were quite positive, especially from Amazon and Meta, not so much from Apple. So that's one aspect which has driven markets. I think the market is also anticipating the US payrolls number to come out today, and to compare that to some of the statements made by the Fed chair earlier on during the week and get more of an outlook on where rates may be headed. So those are two factors, along with, I would say, some regional bank pressures which have risen again this week.
We'll come back to the US tech earnings, but let's focus in locally for a bit. We've got a Vodacom trading update that came out a little bit earlier. What did you make about the performance for this quarter?
I think it was a solid performance from Vodacom. They mentioned that service revenue for the group was up around 8.8% year on year on a pro forma basis. And if we look at the contribution from Egypt, the Egyptian business grew around 29%. So very, very strong contribution coming from Egypt. And a lot of that driven by financial services customers, so part of the mobile money platform and so on and so forth. So that is becoming an increasingly I suppose, a valuable stream for Vodacom to exploit going forward. They have stated that, their medium-term outlook is to have services or new services revenue contribute about 30% to total. So that would include financial services and other digital platforms. So that is one area which they're going to be looking at growing quite aggressively. And they've mentioned a few initiatives, such as, Project Caper, which is an initiative along with Amazon where you provide satellite connectivity to people in Africa. So these are some potentially exciting aspects that Vodacom can look forward to. But I think investors will be quite pleased that they've got around 7.5 million financial services subscribers at the moment, and that is probably going to grow quite aggressively going forward.
Speaking of something that might be exciting, yesterday we got news out of Canal Plus saying that they've made a non-binding offer to acquire MultiChoice, and it was quite interesting to look at the share price movement as you looked at MultiChoice. Speaking to some analysts, they say it might not be the best deal, but do shareholders have a choice without Canal Plus? What do you make of it?
Well, I suppose there is always a choice. One has to decide how one weighs up the various options. I think it's been a strategically well-timed offer from Canal Plus. If we look at 105 rands, it's pretty much where MultiChoice listed when they were unbundled from their parent. However, it is significantly higher than the lows of around 60 rands a few months ago. So we do know that the short-term outlook is quite negative, and they have alluded to that in their last trading update. So very well timed from a Canal Plus perspective. But I think also one considers that Canal Plus itself is being unbundled from its parent and will be listing soon. One has to take into consideration the fact that it is a mature, developed markets media business. And so where is the growth going to come from? It has to come from Africa. And in Africa, MultiChoice is a major player. So I would venture to say that management and shareholders of MultiChoice do have some bargaining power. And one may see a bit of horse trading as far as extracting a bit more value from Canal Plus going forward. But it has been a torrid experience for shareholders, but it hasn't quite known that this option of a buyout has been in the wings, so to speak. Yeah. So we'll just have to wait and see how shareholders view if they want to try and push for a bit more, or if they're happy to cut their losses and move on, so to speak.
Let's come back to the US tech earnings, and we're going to put on screen a graph for the viewers to see the performance of the mega cap tech companies, at least year to date. What do you make of 2024 for them? Can they still perform the same way that they did, or are you feeling slightly cautious about it?
Well, I would venture to say that operationally, some of them certainly can. If one has to consider the likes of Microsoft, Meta, and Alphabet, I wouldn't be surprised if they continue to produce very strong numbers throughout the year. Others such as Apple and Tesla, which are also part of what people consider the Magnificent Seven, may have slightly more of a harder time just given their business models. Amazon may come out somewhere in the middle. And I think why I'd venture to say that is we can see that the China market is obviously under pressure from a consumer sentiment perspective. Both Tesla and Apple have strong presence in China, and we know that BYD and Huawei, for instance, are very strong competitors, and they're taking market share away from both of those companies in those markets. Whereas with Meta, they produced an extraordinary results, revenue up 25% year on year for the quarter. They mentioned that AI is being utilized more in the Instagram platform, and that's driving engagement. They also mentioned that they're now starting with a buyback. So very, very strong from a Meta perspective, whereas not as strong from an Apple perspective. Amazon somewhere in the middle. So a mixed bag overall.
All right. Well, we're going to leave it there, but hopefully we can continue the conversation as we talk about the mega cap tech companies in more detail. However, Thato, thank you so much for making time to chat with us this Friday afternoon. That is Thato Mashego, who is from Sanlam Private Wealth. And as he mentioned, that investors looking forward to those jobs numbers coming out of the US. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have more news for you, so stay tuned.